In the wake of the New Orleans deadly terrorist attack, New Year's, I was contacted by global media, both here in the United States in the form of CBS, ABC, and Fox News, as well as international media such as the Times of London, CNN International, and Romanian National TV. First and foremost, all media was interested in the ensuing hours of what was law enforcement and the FBI doing in furtherance of this investigation, and what were the big concerns. Obviously, public safety in the wake of a terror attack is first and foremost for law enforcement. We know from multiple attacks around the world in the past, Paris, London, West Africa, Brussels, that terrorists oftentimes act in concert with different cells, and they conduct simultaneous attacks to maximize the terror that they want to exploit. For that reason, law enforcement in the hours following attack are going to drill down forensically and physically and try to determine, is this part of a larger plot? Is this individual, in this particular case, Din Jabbar, was he acting in concert with a larger group? That's first and foremost. We note that the police and the FBI stated right away, within a matter of hours, that the other major event beyond the celebration of New Year's was the Sugar Bowl that was going to take place in New Orleans later that evening. Part of the Football National Championship Series was going to take place in New Orleans. The decision was made, and it was prudent, to stand down for at least 24 hours to give the FBI and law enforcement an opportunity to drill down and determine if this was part of a larger plot. Was Din Jabbar acting alone or in concert with others? And was he directed or was he inspired? First and foremost, what's conducted is what we call a digital forensic analysis. And by that I mean, that fancy term means they basically go into the internet and they look at all of his contacts, his social media, his telephone activity, his cell phone, his visited websites, the chat rooms, and so forth that he visited during that 24-hour period. The determination was made and a press conference was held, and basically it was determined that he was apparently not acting in concert with others, and it appeared as though he was not directly directed to commit this attack, but was inspired through the propaganda and chat sites that he visited online. When I say digital forensics, cyberspace and the internet really have become the medium where terrorist organizations operate today. It's where they conduct their recruitment, their radicalization processes, their training, and their fundraising. We know that ISIS uses a lot of the medium of Telegram and Rocket Chat. They also have an online magazine. So this is the medium, and this is where law enforcement goes and drills down on a full court press basis for 24 hours to determine if public safety continues to be a threat. You know, in the old days, I remember we tracked terrorist organizations and terrorist cells. In order to conduct training and to become trained, they had to go physically to training camps in other parts of the world, meaning they had to buy airline tickets, they had to travel, and there were a number of indicators that law enforcement could pick up on in order to determine if somebody was moving in furtherance of training on behalf of a terrorist organization. All that has changed in that terrorist groups today, much of their activity is conducted online, and all of the necessary training apparatus is all online today, the training manuals and so forth. There was an interest in the following days about characterization of ISIS. What is this? Why is ISIS conducting attacks? We thought they were dead. Is there a global threat? We know that going back to 2016 and 17, core ISIS in Iraq and Syria, where they were attempting to establish a radical terrorist-based caliphate, was pretty much wiped out through military targeting, and their leadership, including Their leader, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, were taken out in 16 and 17. Nonetheless, cells of ISIS have continued to exist in the region, in the Middle East, but also in Southeast Asia and West Africa, and even in Russia and in Iran. Here in the United States, we've seen incidents of ISIS operators being arrested. Last summer, with respect to a Taylor Swift concert in Vienna, Austria, the Austrian police were able to get out in front of a potential terrorist attack that was to take place at that Taylor Swift concert through an analysis of his activity online and his communication online, and we're able to arrest that subject prior to that attack in Vienna. In September, just this past September here in the United States, a Pakistani who crossed the northern border of the United States that was targeting a Jewish target in Brooklyn, New York, was arrested by the FBI. A month later in October, an Afghani operating on behalf of ISIS-K or ISIS Khorasan was arrested targeting election day activity here in the United States in November. Again, law enforcement was able to get out in front of this through a cyber analysis of their activity and their contacts. A teenager in Arizona was arrested also in October, acting on behalf of ISIS, targeting a gay pride parade. Here in Houston, Texas, in November, this past year, an ISIS operator was arrested targeting military recruitment centers, and he was also charged with providing military support to ISIS in that he was offering apartments as safe houses for ISIS operators. Following the days after the attack, the media interests really focused on the search warrants that were being conducted by law enforcement, headed up by the FBI, here at his residence in Houston, Texas. This is somewhat of a paradigm shift from cyber and a forensic analysis from cyberspace into a physical analysis. They went to his residence. They were looking for any materials related to the plot, and it seems as though their investigation and their search warrants focused mostly on the bombing materials. We know that Din Jabbar had a couple of improvised explosive devices in his vehicle when he was confronted by the police and ultimately shot and killed. The focus was looking at potential bombing materials, precursors that could be ammonium nitrate, sodium nitrate, or precursor chemicals such as acetone, ether, or nitric or sulfuric acid. The importance of that for law enforcement of conducting that, obviously it can be evidentiary, but the results of those search warrants can also significantly feed into the intelligence base of law enforcement. It can give law enforcement and the intelligence community some clues into some of the bomb-making materials that they're collecting and give them some sort of preventative clues in terms of what to look for when it comes to sales of specific precursors, hopefully identifying those who might be collecting those things in a somewhat proactive sort of a sense for law enforcement and getting out in front of and trying to prevent terrorist attacks from happening by determining who's buying this, who's ordering it, and where is it going. So those are some key things that law enforcement determines from those interviews and that part of the investigation. A few final notes. The media was very interested in, sort of as the investigation progressed, was did the police do enough to protect the public? How was Din Jabbar able to pull this off in spite of security measures obviously being in place? Look, we live in a free and open society, and we can only harden targets and increase perimeters so much, and then we begin to relinquish that freedom and that openness. Interestingly, though, Din Jabbar did exhibit a certain amount of intelligence collection and tradecraft. We could see that in the method by which he committed his attack. The police had put marked vehicles on the streets, functioning as barriers to the celebratory activity that was taking place in New Orleans, Bourbon Street and other streets. And Din-Jabbar was able to drive around that barrier, as we see, and go up on the sidewalk. He knew he needed a certain type of vehicle to do that, and as such, he rented a Ford F-150 truck. Interestingly enough, too, part of his trade craft was he wanted to fly under the radar in case police were monitoring rental sites, and he went to a vehicle sharing app online, Turo. So he kind of used some sophisticated tradecraft there, renting sort of in a very subtle way on a vehicle sharing site, Turo, and rented a Ford F-150 truck. Interestingly enough, for me, I found it interesting in terms of his tradecraft too, in that he rented a EV, an electric vehicle, an electric powered truck, a battery powered truck. Why did he do that? He was able to jump that sidewalk. We know the torque of electric vehicles is much more powerful than a conventional vehicle. He was able to jump that sidewalk and do it with a certain amount of stealth. Electric vehicles are very quiet. Had he used a traditional diesel or gas-powered automobile, certainly would have warned those who were the victims that it was coming down the sidewalk. An electric vehicle is very quiet, it moves silently, and as such, he was able to take out and kill 15 individuals and seriously wound 35 individuals. This, to me, was part of the wake-up call, and the reality that this was the most deadly attack on U.S. soil since the Pulse nightclub attack in 2016. Is ISIS a threat to the United States? Yes. ISIS is resurging globally. They, along with other terrorist organizations, always look to hit symbolic targets. This was the holiday season in the United States. We could see ISIS conducted other attacks, Christmas attacks at the Christmas market in Germany just weeks earlier. They had attacked Christmas worship services in West Africa just in the weeks prior to this attack, and then ultimately the New Year's attack in New Orleans. ISIS is on the march. They're recruiting. They're using Gaza, the Gaza war and the deaths of thousands of Palestinians as a recruitment cause online, and that's significant. They're also capitalizing on the fall of Bashar al-Assad regime in Syria, along with U.S. and allied attacks on ISIS targets in the region. So for these reasons, this is a wake-up call for us, that the threat of radical Islamic fundamentalist terrorism, whether it comes in the form of ISIS, Al-Qaeda, or Iranian-backed Hezbollah, is a clear and present danger to us and the world.